Hello, it's Amy, and I'm back reading from the Journal of Emily Shore. I do apologize, it's been about 2 or 3 weeks since I brought a chapter to you, and I did promise to be back on the following Monday from the time I posted the last reading from this journal. But as I said, I apologize, it's been a couple of weeks. But here we are picking up with January of 1839. And I believe we were on the entry for January the 7th, which was a Monday. Mr. Phelps called. While he was in the room, the bells of the Carmel church opposite our window suddenly began. "There's the sacrament going by," said Mr. Phelps. So we got up to look, for it was a sight quite new to us. A procession of men in scarlet gowns, carrying silver maces and a canopy over the vicar, who bore the host, passed under the window. The bells rang as long as they were in our sight, and everyone dropped on his knees while they went by. They were going to visit a dying person. That's some ominous foreshadowing there. January 8th, Tuesday. Being determined to secure a walk today, we set off between 11 and 12. The thermometer at sunrise had been only 51.5 degrees, and that would of course be 51.5 degrees Fahrenheit, out of doors, which is wonderfully low for Madeira. But by the time we were out of doors, the temperature was like that of June. We could not endure the sun without parasols, and carefully sought out the shady side of the street. We went to another Ribiera de Santa Luisa, says the note here. The one we crossed in going to the Rua di Giano Tavera. I wish I knew their names. We walked slowly along its side, up a continued but good ascent, and every now and then sat down to rest and enjoy the very picturesque town scenery of Funchal, for I could not walk nearly far enough to get out into the country. The street by the Ribiera is very broad, clean paved and planted with trees, amongst which are some beautiful weeping willows still in full leaf. All the Ribieras have a low stone parapet on each side, which is interrupted here and there by a steep flight of stone steps for the washerwoman to go down and wash their linen in the bed of the torrent, where now only a scanty stream runs along, replenished by numerous little fountains gushing out of their sides, and, I suppose, coming through the town from the hills. We watched the washerwomen that fill the channel of the Ribiera, which is about 20 or 30 feet deep, and then we saw them rubbing the linen on the great stones, and did not wonder that it soon wore out. The sides of the Ribiera are generally walled up with stone, on which, wherever little streams run down, a verdure of ferns and mosses springs. The banks are everywhere overhung with shrubs and flowers and creepers from the houses and gardens on the opposite side. On our side, the houses are at a considerable distance, leaving ample walking space. Narrow, irregular streets diverge, and the mountain towers above all, appearing at every gap through stone trellises covered with vines and roofs mantled with the pumpkin. I've noticed in these later entries, Emily becomes quite fond of these long, winding sentences with many compartments and many commas to them, which are not so common in her earlier, younger writing. And so I think I find myself stumbling just a little bit more over her sentences, just because they're so long. And it's hard to catch the proper rhythm of them here. The houses and gardens rise terrace above terrace up the mountains in the most picturesque manner, amidst the richest luxuriance of orange trees, bananas, fig trees, sugar canes, and roses, with here and there a palm tree or bamboo. I cannot describe the beauty of the vegetation. I say the same things over and over again in every walk, because the same thing always strikes me anew. I still cannot help noticing the dress of the common people, the handkerchiefs tied round the heads of the women, and the odd little carapuzas on those of the men. The carapuza is usually purple, lined with red, and is so small that I wonder it does not fall off. The only sort of vehicle used in Funchal, the wooden tray or sledge drawn by a yoke of oxen, is constantly to be met, and as the oxen wear bells constantly to be heard. All the oxen are small, red, and something like the Devonshire breed. There is no one of all our Madeira acquaintance I like so much as Miss Freeman. She is a sweet creature, mild, gentle, thoughtful, almost to sadness of expression, yet with no coldness of manner, but a soft, engaging kindness. She is pleasing at the very first, but rather to be called very winning than very attractive. I cannot imagine anything gentler than she is. I feel that I should soon love her very much. She is in deep mourning for a sister who died of consumption only 2 days after her brother and herself left England. He, poor young man, is, I should fear, far gone in the same disease, and his sister today says he is worse. His voice is almost gone and off, and he can hardly make himself heard. But, although he is very thin, there is nothing in his appearance to indicate his fatal malady, except the bright glassy look of his blue eyes. He's as good and amiable as his sweet sister. I believe Mamma is more stuck with him, and I with her. Both of them seem entirely made up of goodness. January 9th, Wednesday. The Freemans told us that they had brought their horse and a man for me to take a ride, for which I was very thankful to them, not being able to walk much today. They took their leave immediately, and I prepared to ride, putting on a riding skirt with which Miss F. kindly furnished me. Mamma accompanied me on foot. As we returned home through Funchal, another way, we were struck with the lofty appearance of the mountains when we saw them through the narrow streets. We passed under the fort, which stands on a grey rock with prickly pear. The narrowness of the streets is a great advantage, as it makes them quite cool and shady, and produces pleasant currents of air. I am quite reconciled to the sharp pavement, without which I think no horse would keep his footing. The Rua de Caria seems to be one of the principal streets of Funchal. It is really handsome, spite of the irregularity of the buildings, for there are no two houses alike in Funchal, and certainly it is marvellously clean. It is easy to see where a stream ran down the middle. It is now covered over with a perforated stone here and there, and gratings which lift up. The shops of Funchal are mean, dark holes. Nothing is displayed at the windows, and the name of the owner, instead of being placed conspicuously above the door, is written in insignificant characters on a small board hung out on a stick a few feet from the ground. The commonest notice on these boards is Peo Vino Bom, often abridged into PVB. This is the 5th nosegay we have had given us in 2 days, and we have filled 3 finger glasses with them, besides 3 wine glasses of violets. They consist of various sorts of roses, camellia, japonicas, jessamine, hibiscus, orange flower, lemon flowers, salvia, geranium, heliotrope, bachelor's buttons, arum, some flowers whose names we do not know, and a blossom of the datura, one of the most graceful of flowers and very fragrant in the nighttime. What a nosegay for January. I should add that almost all these are finer than they would ever have been found in England, and that they grow here like weeds. January 10th, Thursday. Mr. V, according to an agreement made yesterday, called for Mamma and Elle at 7 this morning, and they all took a walk. It was a sweet morning, and they came back to breakfast enchanted with what they had seen. They had been up one of the Ribeiras, far up into the ravine, with Elle, and Mr. V's help had scrambled up the mountainside, covered with purple wild myrtle. I sighed to think how impossible it was for me to ever see these wild rocky spots, where neither horse nor palanquin could travel. But I had my turn of delight afterwards, for kind Miss F. sent me her horse again, and I had a ride through the most beautiful scenery I have yet beheld. I came at length to where the path divided. On the left is a sweet villa shaded with thick trees. On the right I slightly ascended till I reached the gate of a grand quintera called the Palmira, if I understood my attendant rightly. We then passed along by a narrow path under its walls for a considerable way. Never did I see so magnificent a place as this Palmira. The grounds must be immense. It seems to stand on a pile of precipitous rocks, or rather they surround it with a mighty rampart, beneath which my path wound for some part of its great circuit. The house being within, I saw nothing of it, but I saw that the rocks were crowned completely with trees of various kinds, which also partly clothed their sides, mixed with ferns, mosses, ivy, and flowers, especially the prickly pear which grows on every rock. The appearance of the place is something like an enchanted fairyland. At length I came to a sudden turn, where beauty which I cannot describe burst upon me. I was immediately under the rocky wall, which now formed one side of a narrow ravine, through which a clear rapid rivulet rushed from behind, and, falling in an irregular cascade, foamed away down the steep hill to Funchal. The hill on the other side of the ravine is some way beyond, fringed with wood, and the view through the ravine in front is closed up with a distant mountain and the Mount Church. Behind lie the Funchal and the sea. Turning to the left, I and my guide crossed the stream by a little bridge, and continued to go through a series of narrow roads between walls and gardens, and under vine trellises. I had made a complete circuit of a great part of Funchal, ascended the mountain on the west, ridden along its front, and descended again towards its western side. I passed by Mr. Lowe's, the clergyman's house, which is in a lovely situation. Indeed, there is hardly a house on any height in or round Funchal whose situation is not more or less beautiful. Finally, I came home along the Riviera with the willow trees, entering much above the turn to Rose Cottage, where the rocks rise precipitously on the other side. Few towns are supplied with a number of such noble walks as these by the Rivieras of Funchal. They are broad, airy, shaded with trees, level for a long way, and pass through most picturesque scenery. I prefer them to the Praca Academia. And that is the end of the entry for January the 10th, 1839. And I promise I will indeed be back tomorrow with another reading, beginning with the entry for January the 11th. Thank you.